What is up? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. Amanda Atwell out again for the Wednesday night live stream. She'll be back next week. In the meantime, I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. We'll be taking you through your Wednesday night. Got a lot to run down. SEC teleconference was today. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the slate of games this week in the conference with the Longhorns off. Really good week for Texas to have the bye week if you just want to sit in front of the TV and watch some good SEC football. Plenty of big-time games in the conference. I want to talk about a couple of Longhorns after looking at some Pro Football Focus numbers and 3 Longhorns nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We'll get to all of that and more. We'll get to your questions. Don't forget super chats jump to the front of the line, so get them in. CJ, are you over the John Mateer situation? Do you have no more tears to cry?
Yeah, it's the well has dried up. We're moving forward. It is unfortunate. I will say credit. I don't give Oklahoma fans credit very often, but I will give them credit this afternoon. You know, I don't know if folks followed it on Twitter all too much, but you know, the finding of the surgeon and then putting it up as if he is going into battle or war, and just there were some funny tweets today. I was giggling at a few of them, but no, it's been a tough 48 over here.
OU Twitter, believe it or not, to me in some ways is a little more tolerable than Aggie Twitter. Aggie Twitter just there's very little self-awareness from the Aggies who are willing to put themselves out on Twitter. So yeah. And that leads us into let's talk about the SEC quarterback discussion, because that was kind of the topic du jour on the SEC coaches teleconference today. CJ, I think it's funny that, and it's been A&M fans more so than Oklahoma fans, because Oklahoma fans are in the same boat. Look, Oklahoma's new to the SEC. They're playing this league schedule the first time last year, going through it again the second time this year. It's just comical the amount of narratives the A&M fan base has tried to drum up to diminish somehow what Texas has done in the conference. Last year it was because the schedule was terrible. Now this year it's all, hey, look at how many times Texas had to play the backup quarterback. They've had to play backup quarterbacks all the time. It's not fair. Not to take away Amanda's thunder, but those goalposts, man, they just keep on moving.
It's got to be exhausting, right? It's got to be. There's always something. There's always a different angle. There's always a different avenue that folks look at down in College Station that try to discredit what Texas has been able to build. And I understand it. It's part of college football to look over at your rivals and take away, right? Why would you want to build up? And it's tough, right? I'm sure A&M fans are in quite a dilemma, right? Because for years it's been SEC. We got to ride the coattails of Georgia and Alabama to promote our program, but we can't have that with Texas. So we got to tear down our SEC friends when, well, that's been basically the opposite of what we've seen over the last 15 years. But look, for Texas, I mean, if teams want their quarterbacks to be healthy when they play the University of Texas, they should probably protect their quarterback a little bit better, Jeff. That's no fault of Texas's. And, I know that there were some disingenuous statistics thrown out yesterday in regards to who Texas has faced when it comes to playing some backup quarterbacks. When your starter is benched in the second half for a number of games against the Longhorns because of performance, that's not luck. No, that's because they needed something else.
The ones that are comical, like I saw somebody that unfortunately breathes the same air we breathe put out a list. The ones that were comical were Oklahoma was mentioned that Texas faced Michael Hawkins instead of Jackson Arnold. If Jackson Arnold was turning the ball over all over the place, that game would have gotten more out of hand last year. Like, there's a reason why he got benched. They even put the list. There it is right there. Texas probably wins the SEC championship game if they don't knock Carson Beck out of the game because he was playing terribly.
Right.
Mississippi State, it wouldn't have mattered if it was Van Buren, Chapin, or one of us playing quarterback for Mississippi State. Mississippi State 2024 was not going into Austin. By the way, Texas playing with its backup quarterback. No, we didn't mention that.
Of that.
It didn't matter who was starting in that game. And then, was there a difference between Aiden Warner and DJ Lagway? Obviously, 100%. But neither one of those guys played defense. And that Florida defense was forgettable. And I'm being very nice when I describe the state of the Florida defense last year. in that game in Austin. That may have been, CJ, that may have been, other than maybe the Tech game his first year, that may have been the most precision, on point, flawlessly executed game we've seen from a Sark offense at Texas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what was it, 42-7? Like, before we could blink, we're very early into that third quarter. We're sitting around saying, all right, day's done for Quinn Ewers in the starting offense. We're going to get to see a lot of these freshmen, and that was exciting. But no, I guess what's going to come up next, because the SEC is releasing a lot of their injury reports, as we've talked about it. News earlier this week came out that Florida cornerback Dijon Johnson will be out for the remainder of the year as well. So, Jeff, I mean, if it's not quarterbacks, I'm sure we're going to eventually see the list of cornerbacks that have been sidelined, just to discredit what Texas. And look, Texas has been dinged up across the board too. It wasn't too long ago where our starting running back lost for the year likely prevented the Longhorns from winning a national championship. So, look, teams deal with injuries. To look at it in the sense that luck is the entire reason why a program has gone to back-to-back Final Fours and is in a position once again to be a top 10 college football playoff team. Look, if that's the case for 3 straight years, and Steve Sarkisian and Chris Del Conte need to go buy lottery tickets immediately. They've built a good program, and they've built depth to withstand a number of injuries. Unfortunately, not like a lot of these other programs that they're playing.
It's laughable to suggest that the difference between Texas beating Texas A&M or not last year was Connor Wigman on the field over Marcel Reed. There's a reason. Like, yeah, I know Wigman had an injury, whatever. Anybody that watched A&M last year could tell, like, they're a better offense with Marcel Reed. Like, it's not going to be Wigman. It's not going to work with Colin Klein. And it didn't work. And also, Texas didn't get lucky that, I don't know, call it luck, call it whatever you want. Like, Colin Klein did his share to cost A&M that game, calling maybe, I'd have to go back and really rack my brain, CJ, maybe the worst 4th and goal call I've ever seen in my life. With that, like, extremely long, deep handoff in the backfield that Ethan Burke read and just buried it. So, yeah, let A&M fans move the goalpost all they want. It doesn't really matter on our end. But the 2 quarterbacks that we need to talk about, DJ Lagway and John Mateer. We talked about Mateer a lot on the channel yesterday with the surgery. Today, Lagway was in a boot earlier this week. CJ, Billy Napier shot down a lot. It was two very different responses for their quarterback's health. Billy Napier said DJ Lagway's at practice. He's 100%. It's comical that there's the red shirt and transfer portal rumors out there with Lagway. He said Lagway's good to go. So I'll take Billy Napier at his word on that. Brent Venables, on the other hand, was asked about timeline for John Mateer. CJ, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, I'm not here to discuss a timeline. It doesn't matter right now, which I don't know, man. Brent Venables probably didn't slept much the last few days, so I don't fault him for that. But 2 very, very different thoughts from those coaches on their quarterbacks who are on the men right now.
Yeah, and look, for Billy Napier, I think you'd certainly need DJ Lagway. And it's odd to say given how he's performed this year. Obviously, I would be shocked if at any point this year he's been 100% health-wise. But you need him, right? You need him because if without DJ Lagway, you lose the locker room. You lose that hope that we've talked about going into games, going into big contests at home. And I think as a result, you would then lose the fan base. Why would a Florida fan base show up against a game like Texas when they're already 1-3 and your starting quarterback is out? On top of that, we did see a glimpse of DJ Lagway in practice. The Florida graphics department put out a small little clip of him practicing this morning. And look, I do think Lagway is going to play against Texas. A foot injury, a toe injury, whatever it is. Look, he's been on a boot basically for the last 6 months. That's just the matter of the fact. And again, boots these days, very much precaution.
100%.
Versus what they were probably a year ago when, guys, unless they had a black and blue ankle, that's the only way you could get them in a boot. So I don't think it's too significant for DJ Lagway. Here it is. And that looks like a guy that's moving around pretty fine, Jeff. If you're rolling out of the pocket and hucking a ball pretty deep, which we need to talk about his deep throwing statistics because it's pretty bad. DJ Lagway is going to play against Texas. I feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah, my big thing with Florida is, their running game just hasn't been great. And I really thought that would be the one piece of their offense that was going to click early. And it just hasn't happened. Jaden Ball's health to me is the big question for them. We'll see if he's back for the Texas game. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, CJ. I would assume he is, but we'll see with that. And we'll get to, because there's a question in the chat about Texas and Florida. We'll get to that. But again, with Mateer, I don't know if Venables just doesn't know the timeline, wanted to see how the surgery went, whatever. Man, they're up against it because they're going to have to win. If OU is going to win without John Mateer, it's going to have to be ugly. I mean, they're going to have to really try to shut teams out or get really close to it, play field position, try really hard not to turn the ball over. Very, very different team. And even with Mateer, CJ, it's not like they were this unbeatable, unstoppable machine. It's just everything ran through John Mateer, and now who knows how long they're going to be without him.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was going to go with this conversation, Jeff, because look, Oklahoma's 4-0, right? They've won 2 ranked games at the moment, Michigan, Auburn. Those are impressive wins early in the season. I'm not going to discredit that. And we've talked about it. John Mateer is I don't need to beat the drum here. John Mateer is a great quarterback. I love him in the game of college football. I think he's a total gamer. I think he rallies the troops. I could go on, obviously, but I'm not going to. What's interesting here is the last time Texas saw Michael Hawkins, it was disgusting, right? It looked like the game of football had been set back 20 years, right? It was piss poor offensively. It looked like they didn't trust him to do a whole lot of anything with that offense. And on top of that, they didn't have a lot of receivers, and depth across the offensive line was poor. That's changed a little bit this year, right? That offensive line and pass protection been pretty good. They still can't run the football, but those wide receivers are something that you have to be aware of, right? Deion Burks, certainly a guy that you gotta account for, right? Giovanni Gibson, very much a deep threat. Now, what's interesting is this: Michigan, good defense; Auburn, good defense, especially up front. Texas has that as well. You scored 22 points plus a 2-point safety against Auburn to win 24-17. You scored 24 points against Michigan, you win 24-13. Okay, that's with your starting quarterback. Yeah. Now, again, go back to what we saw just last year with Michael Hawkins. Is Michigan scoring 24 points? I know that Ben Arbuckle is going to find a way to get the most out of him, more than what Texas saw a year ago. But he's not a guy that's going to go up there and score 24 points on Texas in this game. No shot. Doesn't matter what they were able to do in that offensive line with those wide receivers. Because, again, and this hasn't been talked about enough, I'll keep saying it until this game is played in Dallas, this is the worst rushing attack in the entire SEC. With their running backs, with their offensive line, with the push by tight ends, they don't have it. It's non-existent. It is a terrible rushing attack, and it is 100% one-dimensional. It's why drives fail. It's why they have to kick field goals. It's why they are unable to score points when they have a quarterback that should be able to put 30 up against whoever they play, Jeff.
Yeah, I know I said what I said in our prediction show to start the year. I felt like Texas was going to mudhole Oklahoma. I can still feel that way, but every year it happens to me. The closer we get to that game, I just get nervous because I've seen weird stuff happen in that game. Like Gerard Hurd quarterback Texas to a win over an OU team that won a conference championship, made the playoff, and was quarterbacked by Baker Mayfield. I've seen 4 OU teams win Big 12 championships in years where they lost to Texas. So I've seen too many weird things in that game to just like rubber stamp it. And yes, I'm 100% confidence, even though we'll talk about it when we get closer to the game. Like if Sark is going to really take this thing where we think he could take it, no Texas coach has done that in the history of this program without a sustained run of success against Oklahoma. We can talk about the rivalries with A&M and Arkansas, whatever. Oklahoma's a team you got to beat to get to where you want to be. And Sark has to start doing that on a consistent basis. Is it his fault that, in 2022, 49-0, that OU didn't have anybody who could complete a forward pass? It's not Sark's fault. If Mateer's out this year, is that Sark's fault? No. Is it Sark's fault that last year Jackson Arnold sucked and OU had to change quarterbacks? No. It's not his fault. It just is what it is. We'll get back to it on the other side, but let's go ahead and thank our first sponsor tonight, and that's Vonlane. This fall, you've got places to be. Texas football at DKR, Red River in Dallas, NFL Sundays in Houston and Dallas, plus ACL Fest, and the F1 race in Austin. Why waste hours at the airport stuck behind the wheel? With Vonlane, you just walk into a hotel terminal, check in within minutes, and you're on board. No TSA, no hassle. Settle into just one of 22 oversized first-class seats. Stretch out, recline, and enjoy complimentary Wi-Fi, snacks, and drinks. You want a beer or a cocktail? They've got you covered. Travel is now open through December. So book today for game days, concerts, or even Thanksgiving and Christmas trips. Visit vonlane.com and use the code OTF25. That's OTF25 to save $20 on your first ride. Vonlane, it's a private jet on wheels. CJ, let's get to a couple of questions. Again, Super Chats jump to the front of the line, and thanks everybody for your participation. Let's start with Roger. How does Texas match up with Florida in y'all's opinion? Roger, thank you for the question. CJ, we talk about Florida's lack of run game. Given what we've seen and what we know about the Texas defensive front, it's hard for me to envision. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just can't predict that Florida's just going to show up on the 4th in Gainesville and just run the ball down Texas's throat.
Yeah, it's been interesting again because their run game not very good this year either, right? And we've talked about it. Jaden Ball expected to be and is one of the better running backs in all of the SEC, yet you haven't really seen it this year out of the Florida run game. He's created a lot of missed tackles. Florida, outside of that, not a whole lot. On top of that, yards per carry, not necessarily where it needs to be either. So it's interesting, right? It's put DJ Lagway, unfortunately, in a pretty tough situation where he has to carry the burden of a lot of that offense. And that offense, again, we've talked about it. It should have a number of weapons, right? Dallas Wilson. We talked about Eugene Wilson. Look, they've got some wide receivers out front or out wide. DJ Lagway, for whatever the reason, maybe it's injuries, maybe it's his shoulder, maybe it's just a lack of continuity with some of those wide receivers, Jeff, hasn't been able to connect with them down the field. And I say this because I was looking at it earlier today. DJ Lagway on throws 10 of 19 yards. He's 15 of 30, 50%. That's not great. That's not terrible. He's got 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Again, very middle of the road there. And then you go look at it on passes 20 yards down the field. And I think Texas fans are going to hear me talk about this quite a while until this game in Gainesville. Through 4 games, Jeff, they've attempted 7 passes of 20 yards or more. 7. That is a 5.7% volume share of 20 yards or more down the field. That ranks 146th in the entire country. God. Out of 146 quarterbacks that qualify. It is dead last. Ooh. That was the entire magic of DJ Lagway a year ago. He came on in the field. You could argue the intermediate and short wasn't great, but what would he do? He would kind of scramble around, find a guy running deep, and he would put a magical touch on a ball that would end up changing the outcome of a game, right? That's what the magic of Lagway his freshman year was, and that's completely absent. Now, is that something that Florida's perhaps saving? We'll see, but through 4 weeks, they're dead last in deep ball attempts this year, and overall, they're 43% on passes over 10 yards downfield. That's pretty bad when your run game can't get going either.
And I'll give you a fun fact why Texas probably isn't the game where they're going to have success chunking it deep. Jalani McDonald, I didn't realize this, CJ, until I looked at the numbers. Jalani McDonald's been targeted more than any safety in the SEC this year.
Really?
15 times he's been targeted. And it's not going so well for the opponents. Of those 15 targets, 8 receptions. It's right a little over 50% catch rate. With 2 interceptions, Jalani McDonald's NFL passer rating for opposing quarterbacks when targeted, 28.1. I don't know if if anybody out there knows a lot about NFL pass rating. 28.1 is not very good.
Yeah.
So I guess, CJ, they can just keep throwing at Jalani McDonald and he'll just keep making plays. We talked about him yesterday on the show. We talked about him on the channel this week. Like it's getting to the point where here pretty soon, when you start talking about the top safeties, the top secondary players and maybe even the top defenders in the SEC at some point, his name is going to keep coming up more and more in that conversation.
Yeah, look, he's tied for the SEC lead with 2 interceptions. I know that's not super significant, but hey, 2 picks. He's caused another one, right? The one that Jalen Gilbo was able to come down with off of the tip. And to your point, Jeff, that passer rating against 28.6, that's the 4th best amongst SEC safeties as well. So Jelani's a stud. I'm glad that folks are starting to recognize that nationally now because We've seen the progression from his freshman year when it was a kind of a toolsy, rangy cat. You didn't know necessarily where he would fit in the defense. And then a year ago, and I think his coming out party for Texas fans was being able to play in place of Andrew Makuba on the road in Nashville against Vanderbilt, where on that first drive, he had a play running the alley on a run play outside that without him probably goes for 20 yards. And it was one of the bigger hits of the entire afternoon. So Jalani McDonald, Texas fans certainly know the talent he is. Now it's time for SEC fans to be welcomed to the Jalani McDonald show.
No doubt. Jordan Barker has a question. Do we get Wisner back for the Florida game? CJ, I'm thinking Quintravion Wisner will be. Mama named him Quintravion. I'm calling him Quintravion. I'm thinking he'll be back for the Florida game.
Yeah, I'm expecting Trey back. I call him Trey because that's all I've known him as. Now, I will, of course, respect Mama Wisner. She's been fantastic, and a big reason why Quintravion is where he is. But no, Texas is expecting him back for Florida. Of course, a bit of a soft tissue injury that has sidelined him the last 3 weeks. But Jeff, I go back to that Ohio State game, and it's interesting because I talked with Rod and Bobby earlier today on the breakdown, and we talked a little about what this run game is, what this Texas offense has been through 4 weeks. And I said, look, I think you're just going to get this version of a Texas offense. Like we talk about it, with running backs in the NFL. Oh, you need 2 yards with running back X, they'll get you 2 yards. You need 5 yards, they'll get you 2 yards. You need 8 yards, they'll get you 2 yards. I think with this Texas offensive line, they'll get you 150, 160 yards running, and it just doesn't matter who they're playing, right? To run for 166 against Ohio State, that's great. And you turn around, you look at UTEP, and you're like, well, we just ran for 140. What's the issue? And it's like, well, it's kind of just who they are, right? Yeah. You're going to get about 160 yards. But with Trey Wisner, 16 rush attempts on 80 yards against Ohio State, I look at that and say, this could be the guy that creates the missed tackles down the field, the yards after contact, gets skinny in tight situations, and allows the stat sheet to look a little prettier than maybe what we're anticipating. So getting him back is huge, Jeff.
Yeah, and we'll get to a couple super chats here on the other side, but I do want to take a second right now. Let's take a pause and thank another sponsor. Let's thank our friends over at South Point Dodge. Texas football fans score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock, including the all-new 2025 Ram 1500. Get the real deal today and drive away in an all-new Ram that's proven to last. Plus, you can get employee incentive pricing. That's right. You pay what our employees pay. Now that is the real deal. So score big at South Point Dodge. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. All right, let's go ahead and get to a couple of super chats. Nick, thank you for the super chat. Do we expect Simon to continue to be the running back at the goal line moving forward, even getting back Baxter and Trey? Love having them all available. CJ, Rod and I are probably going to get into this on Football Theory this week, but when you talk about goal line and short yardage, I feel like their split zone RPO stuff, I feel like that's helping them form some sort of identity in short yardage goal line situations. Like you look at that concept, like you go back to the Ohio State game, the first failed fourth down is the second fourth down that they went for in that game. It was like they ran like a little split zone RPO, even though it was set up like an RPO, but it didn't come off as one because Arch handed it off. I think it was to Baxter, and Ohio State stuffed it. But you're like, dude, if Arch pulls that ball, you've either got an easy path to run for a first down, or if that safety comes up and plays you, you can dump it off to injuries and no telling how far he's running. So I know that doesn't really answer the question, Nick. I apologize for that, but I think this, CJ, goes back to your point about the offensive line. I don't know that it matters really which running back is in there, because I just don't look right now, and maybe they get there at some point. This offensive line just isn't one that's going to win in a phone booth consistently. And you just can't count on it.
Sorry to cut you off there. It's interesting because of the short yardage situations. They still haven't necessarily improved, and that goes back to what I was talking about against Ohio State. Goal line situation there. We talked about it at UTEP. You know, Texas had plenty of chances on the goal line on 3rd and 4th and 1s where it just didn't, you know, it just didn't register, right? What you wanted. Those successful rush attempts, they just weren't there. Now, Texas, I think, has found a remedy for those short yardage situations, especially on the goal line, and that's the legs of Arch Manning, right? 5 rushing attempts or 5 rushing touchdowns leads the SEC. It's tied for the lead with Mateer. So that's a remedy by itself. Now, when you get CJ Baxter back, it makes sense for him at 235 pounds to be your goal line guy. Now, I have come around a little bit, Jeff, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well. Jarrett Gibson runs hard, and he cuts quickly. Low center of gravity, you get him the ball as long as he can hold on to it, and that's where I've been very cautious with projecting Jarrett to really be a big piece of this offense. But we saw him get the start a week ago, and he looked good early on, right? I thought Jarrett Gibson, again, runs hard, he cuts well, and he has a low center of gravity that I think is very well suited for these tough running situations. If he can prove again to hold on to the football and earn that trust, that's another option. What's going to be really interesting is, do we ever see a pony package 2-back look with Jarrett Gibson and CJ Baxter behind Arch Manning to create kind of a faux fullback?
Yeah, I still think if we're going to see pony, CJ Baxter has to be part of that, just because you need him on the field for pass protection.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you can be versatile out of it. You can motion shift, go to empty, whatever. You can do a lot of different things with it. But I just think you've got to have Baxter as a part of that. Here's something interesting on Jarrett Gibson. And this is going to sound asinine, and I'm just spitballing, right? I'm just throwing something at the wall, CJ, seeing if it sticks. Maybe it just falls off. Jerry pointed this out when we were doing the watch with us during the Sam Houston game. If you look at the runs Jarrett Gibson has, when he's at his best, it's when he can get the ball on a toss and just kind of let it develop in front of him and then get downhill. I don't know how you replicate that all the time without being predictable. In other words, like Trey Weiser, if you watch Trey Weiser, Trey can feel the play as it's going, and you know he can hit the cutback. And James Simon's got a little bit of that. It's almost like like Jarrett Gibson needs to see it open up and then boom, go. It's not going to happen on the fly. Again, it's going to sound asinine. In a short yardage situation, is giving him a wildcat snap the worst thing in the world, to where he can get the ball from depth without having the quarterback in front of him and operate that way?
We haven't seen that since what? It was the Red Cat, I believe, was the last time that we saw a wildcat look.
Yes. Yeah, because then
that was around the time Texas was still trotting out some of that 6 offensive line package as well. And I think I don't know this for certainty, but I know that Texas didn't practice that 6 offensive line package a year ago. I don't know whether or not it's a part of the offense this year. I don't know. It also makes me wonder, did Sark just kind of say, to hell with this? We're done with this wildcat 6 offensive line gimmicky look. But I'm with you. You know, is that the worst part? And I'd go back and, I was rewatching the game yesterday. Tuesday, didn't have much to do, just decided to rewatch the game. I do think there is plenty of times, Jeff, where the running backs, whether it's Gibson, Clark, or Simon.
My bad.
A lot of folks were in that conversation.
Yeah.
Whether it's Gibson, Clark, or Simon, too quick to hit the hole. And that goes to your point. Letting the blocks up front kind of just work itself out. Make your offensive line right rather than running into the back of them. And that's a sign of a young running back. You get the ball, Jeff. You don't know the speed of the game. You're kind of antsy, right? For James Simon, I think that happened very early in his first game touching the football. Obviously, we've seen him kind of at a stutter at times. Texas also running a little bit more gap running schemes. So that to me is say, hey, let this work out. Let these offensive linemen clear out and just go to that B gap. Go to that follow the pulling guard, whatever it is. It makes sense for a younger back to do well in that running style.
Yeah, no, I agree. The problem you run into, or that they're running into right now, when I see the offensive line, I do think their pin pull stuff, a lot of it's been some of their best run concepts have been, the front side caving in. You bring, whether it's a backside guard and tackle, backside guard and tight end. We've seen the center. We've seen, Cole Hudson get out there and pull.
Some CTs.
So we've seen different variations of it. It's just, you can tell sometimes when they get like a weird front, somebody's playing a tight front or maybe something they haven't worked against. That's where inexperience kind of hurts them, because you can almost see guys trying to figure out blocking rules on the fly. Yeah. And that's where, that's where one of those deals where, you can see an offensive lineman like 6 yards down the field, not blocking anybody, kind of looking around like, oh, what's he doing? He doesn't want to get physical. Like, no, he just overthought it way too much. And by the time he realized what he was doing, the play's 2 yards behind him and it's dead. So I think a lot of that is going to come with experience. But yeah, I saw what I was going to say is two things here. I've seen Jarrett Gibson, especially in the Sam Houston game, get a little bit better at starting to see things and let things open up. He's not there yet, but he's getting there. And who else was like that early in his career? Jaden Blue was like that for a while. Like,
still kind of is.
Yeah, like you get it, and you'd be like, dude, if you just throttle back just a hair, let that block set up, man, you'll turn that 8-yard run into a 30-yarder.
Yeah.
And eventually he got to that point. So I'm not saying Jarrett Gibson's got Jaden Blue's long speed, but those 6-7 yarders can become explosive plays.
Yeah. Again, it's almost like you need a built-in, stutter step or a jab step, right? And I know that in a lot of time, points to a counter coming. But look, I'm with you. There's sometimes, again, when going back on the tape, especially early on against UTEP, where it was just too quick, didn't allow the blocks up front to materialize in those short yardage situations. I know that you want to get the ball, go quick, but you still need your guys to move the bodies up front. And I also prefer gap scheme, Jeff, than zone scheme, especially with this offensive line front, where I think lateral mobility is anything but the strength of this unit at the moment.
Yeah, it's also in zone, you don't have hard and fast blocking rules either. Most zone concepts don't. It's just kind of, you got to feel it, and first thing that crosses your face. And again, if you're playing a different front, or maybe a front you haven't seen, or there's shift, they move the front post snap. If they're slanting or whatever, it can be a little bit different. So yeah, I think a lot of that's inexperience. Like look, the offensive line hasn't been great, but I don't think they've been just terrible either. I just don't know how high the ceiling is for this group, but that's not any different, CJ, than what I thought during the preseason. So, I didn't know that this offensive line had it this year to be like a top quarter of the SEC offensive line. I'm like, man, if they can get to the middle of the pack, then maybe you're working with something there. We'll see how that goes. But I was thinking about this today in terms of zone runs, man, and getting to the second level. And I know we're getting a little inside baseball here with the football stuff, but like, that's one of the many things that I grew to really appreciate about Kelvin Banks was, man, if Kelvin Banks got to the second level and got his hands on somebody, dude, it was over. It's done. And the guy I see right now when I watch this offensive line zone block, man, Trevor Gooseby is so close to, like, there's been some zone runs behind him that have gone for, that 8 to 12 yards, kind of that sweet spot where you want an effective run. That, man, if he just hold on just a little bit, just a hair longer, man, instead of like an 8-yarder, that's a 20-yarder. Like Trevor Gooseby, I think, is real close to getting there. But it makes sense because as good as he was last year, he's still getting his feet underneath him as a regular starter.
I'm looking at the PFF numbers now, Jeff, because I think what you're saying about Trevor Gooseby is right. Texas has success running left, and I was surprised looking at this just now. Texas running left, 31 rush attempts by their running backs, 148 yards, 4.8 a carry. That's pretty good in comparison to running between the tackles or directly off the tackles, right? And then I look at running off the right side and kind of shocked because I think that there's still plenty of room for Brandon Baker to improve, to grow in his game, to develop as he sees more time. That's to be expected. And I know that more times than not in these outside zone schemes, there is a tight end attached or a lead blocker to some extent. But how about 39 rush attempts off the right end? That's right off of your either your right tackle or your tight end attached. 251 yards, that's 6.4 yards per attempt. That's the heaviest off the tackles or within your tackles of any mark with this Texas offensive line. I would not have expected that. But I would have very much agreed with you that Trevor Gooseby was going to be probably your best overall offensive lineman, both in pass protection and in run blocking. But hey, Texas finding plenty of success running right so far, and that's been a surprise for me.
I think some of that too, if I'm thinking right, most of Arch's runs have been off the right side, which makes sense for kind of an RPO style run. Also, you've got, again, I hate to say it skews the numbers, but it kind of skews the numbers. That 50-yarder by Matthew Caldwell against Sam was also off the right side. So, just want to throw that out there. I agree with you on Baker, and I think Baker's going to be fine, but I feel like I need to mention the Matthew Caldwell run. We got a couple super chats we need to get to, but before we do those, I want to thank another sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream. That's our good friends at Hayes City Store, Travis and the crew over at Hayes City Store. There's a few restaurants, man, that once you go to them, you just know right away it's a special place. And Hayes City Store, for me and my family, it's one of those places. Scratch-made Texas comfort food is what they're all about. They've got the truck stop enchiladas, the chicken fried steak, the homemade desserts. All of it is delicious, and it's made from scratch. They've got live music 6 nights a week. They've got 50 beer taps, ice-cold long necks, tasty margaritas. They've got 11 TVs in the ice house. That's perfect for game days, whether you're talking about Saturday or Sunday. They got that brunch menu Sundays from 10 to 3. That's outstanding. Hayes City Store is dog friendly. They've got a tree net for the kids, plenty of space for the kids to run around. So join the folks out at Hayes City Store and bring your whole crew. For more information, check out the website, HayesCityStoreTX.com. Hayes City Store, it's uniquely Texas. All right, let's get to a couple super chats. CJ, Juan Garza, thank you for the super chat. Sark did load management with this in the 3 games. One, I apologize if there was another part of the question, but yeah, I mean, CJ Sark hasn't shied away from that. He pretty much said, look, they're not going to push or rush anybody back. Sark is, for better or worse, playing the long game. I think that's kind of gotten your offense maybe behind the 8 ball a little bit, but hopefully we see this offense peak at the right time and start to hit their stride as they get some of these pieces back. Like DeAndre Moore coming back for the Sam Houston game. Like, I know it was Sam, and we can say whatever we want about Sam Houston level competition, but man, Sark, and I agree with him, man, DeAndre Moore, just knowing that he came up when he got to campus and got in this program, Chris Jackson and everybody told him, like, hey, watch Jordan Whittington. Everything he does, you're going to be that guy when he leaves. He's taking that role seriously, and Sark's mentioned him, man, just a different level of confidence, levels of energy, just juice overall he brings to the offense. So, yeah, Sark did load management, CJ, but I think that's another thing we need to consider about the offense. As they start getting some of these pieces back, the ceiling goes up a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And again, without DeAndre Moore, I think you saw Texas at its worst, right? You saw Texas without a CJ Baxter, without a Trey Wisner, without a DeAndre Moore, without an Emmett Mosley, right? I think that is partially why you saw some frustrations. It's why the offense didn't click. It's why runs that went for 5 didn't go for 10. Why receptions that went for 5 didn't go for 20. That's a big part of why there were offensive struggles. It's not the end-all be-all, right? Arch still threw 10 straight balls in the dirt. But you certainly get the benefit of having these guys back. And for DeAndre Moore specifically, no play encapsulates more of what his, just being on the field does for Texas, for me, than, what was it, the 20-yard screen to Dalen McCutcheon where he and Ryan Wingo each solidify blocks on the outside. He finds the sliver between the sideline and the blocks, and it's a straight line. Texas hadn't had a run after a catch on a screenplay like that the entire year. In fact, I'd argue it wasn't even remotely close. It probably doubled up your best screenplay until, of course, the Ryan Niblett one later on in that game. But just to having him on the field is huge. And my favorite throw of the day was the arch to DeAndre Moore on the rising crosser in between the corner, the window of a corner and a safety and a linebacker there. It was a tremendous throw. It was something that we hadn't seen from Arch the entire season. And I have to imagine it's just seeing who's running across the field, knowing he's going to be where he needs to be when this ball releases, and having that confidence in him. He's so important. But yes, to the ultimate point, I think we've seen Texas at its very worst offensively. I feel pretty confident saying that.
I hope so.
I know it. And if that's the case, look, it doesn't take a lot. It won't take a lot for Texas offensively to win a lot of football games with the way that this defense is playing. Again, I've talked about the stat, Jeff. I believe you're 26-2 now in the last 3 years when you score 21 points or more.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. I'm excited to see, like, at some point, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, like, to see an offense where you've got Ryan Wingo, Parker Livingston, DeAndre Moore, and Emmett Mosley all available.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even gotten to a game where all those guys have been available yet. That's why, like, a lot of people wrote Arch off after the UTEP game. It was foolish, just foolish to do that because, yeah, did Arch play great against UTEP? No, he didn't play great. But at that point, to write him off, I just didn't think it was wise. Like, let him get all the pieces, and then let's see what this offense looks like. Let him. I didn't think the curve would be this steep, CJ. I don't think any of us did. But one of the things I was excited about going into the year can still happen. Is the potential that Arch has to grow with this offense. Like you said, we've probably seen it at its worst. We definitely haven't seen it at its best.
No.
So get all the pieces back, grow together, start to form an identity, and we'll see where it lands at the end of the day.
And again, going back to Sam Houston, I know it's Sam Houston. They're one of the bottom metric teams in all of the country defensively. I understand that. But look, you score 9 straight times offensively to begin a game. Arch goes 18 of 21 passing, eclipses 300 yards passing, 5 total touchdowns. That, again, is a glimpse of what I believe this team could look like. Are you going to do that in the SEC? Probably not, right, Jeff? That's very rare to see those numbers against an SEC opponent. But I do think you're trending towards seeing a much more competitive Arch Manning and a guy that will certainly ascend the SEC quarterback ranks as the season progresses due to getting better talent on the field around him and ultimately just finding that continuity that was certainly lacking through the first 3 weeks.
No doubt. I've seen some scuttlebutt in the chat. People talking about kind of old school Texas running. It's weird for me now to call Malcolm Brown an old school Texas running back, but it has been more than a decade since Malcolm has been in school. So maybe Malcolm Brown is old school. I'm just saying, running back is the one position where at Texas, I won't tolerate a lot of slander. There's been some really good backs come through this program, some backs that I like people might want to say what they want about Jonathan Gray. Great dude. Malcolm Brown, great dude. Deontay Foreman, great dude. Had a hell of a year in 2016, rushing for 2,000 yards in that veer and shoot offense. So let's be careful, chat. Let's not slander the running back position at Texas. I'm very sensitive to the running backs.
Go back to the Kyle Porter days.
Yeah, we can slander the 2017 running back room for a lot of things, including, I don't know, man, Tom Herman's just disdain for Chris Warren and trying to make him a tight end at some point. Like, I don't know, man. What Butch Hadnot was to a generation of Texas fans, Chris Warren is to another, where you had that one moment where, like, dude, look at that. Look how awesome that is. And for a variety of reasons, some no fault.
Never saw it again.
Yeah, never saw it again.
It's the greatest magic trick I've ever seen, Jeff.
Chris got hurt, and then, like I said, comes back, and Tom Herman decides to make him a tight end. So, is what it is. Chris is a good dude. Also, there's a lot of good dudes have come through that running back room at Texas. Circle of Trust. Let's get to your super chat, CJ. This one I think is for you. Is John Mateer the first person to break a finger doom scrolling on Prize Picks? Shout out to Prize Picks, by the way.
That is pretty funny. I think I can tell this story. I won't include the name of this kid, quarterback now, but I remember going to a high school game years ago. It was one of the first weeks of the year. You know, there's a big game going on. I think the Bills were playing, and I'm sitting there, and I'm talking after the game to this quarterback and said, "Hey, man, like, you got a quick second for an interview?" And he goes, Yeah. Hey, real quick, though, can you tell me the score of the game? You know, did the Bills win? I'm like, yeah, the Bills won. They scored like 30 points. He goes, oh, great. Tell me how many points what did Josh Allen do? Did he get 3 touchdowns? I'm like, yeah, you got him on fantasy? Let me check. So I'm pulling up the box score of this game. I'm looking at him like, I think he had 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. He goes, I'm like, the hell is that? He goes, hit my prize picks. I'm like, you are a senior in high school. What the hell are we doing playing prize picks? What is going on here? Maybe I can share the name in a few years when all of this is gone, but I was shocked.
That is great. That is great. Hey, we were talking about the running back position at Texas, and I do want to bring this up, slightly off topic, but it does pertain to Texas. 128 nominees released today for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2026. And I'm just going to go ahead and voice my displeasure right now. The fact that Casey Hampton was not nominated for the Hall of Fame. This is a travesty. It is unjust. Casey Hampton at least needs to be on the ballot. Yeah, that's worth a hat throw, dog. Casey Hampton not even being nominated for the Hall of Fame at this point is worthy of a hat throw. Because you know what? At some point, Vince Wilfork is probably going to get into the Hall of Fame. And let's put Casey Hampton's numbers up against Vince Wilfork's, and you tell me the difference. So I'm just saying, when the Pittsburgh Steelers did, I think it was their 50th anniversary team, and the defense of the all-time Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line was the Steel Curtain and Casey Hampton. Ooh. You know, you've had a pretty damn good football career. Yes. But Casey Hampton not nominated, but CJ, 3 Longhorns nominated, 2 running backs, Jamal Charles. On the football field, maybe my first favorite Longhorn running back, Priest Holmes, just because my first Texas game ever, Texas Rice, October 2nd, 1993. Priest Holmes ran for 2 touchdowns, was awesome. He was just going by Anthony at that point. He wasn't Priest yet. He was just Anthony Holmes. And Earl Thomas was also nominated. Now, if you're just looking at resume, if you just look at a career on a sheet of paper, Earl Thomas, the fact that he hadn't even been a finalist yet is absurd. Earl Thomas should be a Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
NFL, I've got Earl Thomas's, actually I had it in front of me. Let me pull this up, or pull up Earl Thomas's football resume. By the way, I hate the fact that when I Google Earl Thomas' brother is like second in the Google search. But that's part of what I'm talking about, like why it's, you got to separate it. Obviously won a Super Bowl. Was the only first-round pick in that Legion of Boom secondary that Pete Carroll put together. And by the way, Richard Sherman, going to be a Hall of Famer. Cam Chancellor, probably going to be a Hall of Famer. Earl should be in the Hall of Fame. 3 times he was first-team All-Pro. 2 times second-team All-Pro. 7-time Pro Bowl selection. NFL All-Decade safety in the 2010s. There's no question, CJ, like, other than if the very end of his career is going to be held against him, I get it. That happens with Pro Football Hall of Fame voting. But at some point, Earl Thomas needs to be in Canton. He should be in there.
Yep. And when he does get into Canton, I hope his bust, it's an unfortunate moment, Jeff, but I hope his bust is him on a golf cart leaving University of Phoenix Stadium. I hope that's what his full body bust looks like. That would be tremendous. But no, it's a loaded. Matthew, if you can bring that up just real quick once again, that safety position, that's a loaded group, because I think Cam Chancellor is also a Hall of Famer. Eric Berry, very much a Hall of Famer. You go down the list, Asante Samuel, I'm surprised he's not.
Darren Woodson, as a Cowboys fan, Darren Woodson should be in the damn Hall of Fame.
I was getting down the list. That's where I was going next. But yeah, 100%, man. I mean, that's a loaded group. But atop of the list, I think, is Earl Thomas, because again, what he was able to do for Seattle was tremendous. You don't hear Rob Gronkowski say that there were many guys that he hated to go against the middle of, and it was at 5'10" Earl Thomas that gave him probably the best lick of his life. So
yeah,
I'm with you. He should be in the Hall of Fame. He should get his due. And the Seahawks specifically, when they look all back and and truly give that team its flowers, because I don't think they've done enough for that Legion of Boom yet. It changed the game, right? We've seen such a drastic shift into that cover 3, single high look with 6'2", 6'3" cornerbacks, Jeff, that they changed the entire outlook of how you play defense in the NFL.
Yeah. Look, David Keith Williams brings it up, said both Earl Thomas and Deshaun Elliott were literally robbed of the Jim Thorpe Awards in 2009 and 2017. Look, Deshaun had a great year in 17. No question. But this even goes like Jordan Shipley had a very, very, very good argument that year for winning the Biletnikoff Award over Golden Tate. Eric Berry has a Jim Thorpe Award that belongs to Earl Thomas, and that wrong needs to be righted at some point in my life before I leave this mortal world. Earl Thomas was the best defensive back in college football in 2009, and the Jim Thorpe Award, whatever, nobody can tell me different. Earl Thomas was absolutely – it may be the best single season a Texas defensive back has ever had. Oof. And there have been some good ones, but Earl Thomas – go look at Earl Thomas's 2009. In the history of DBU, there might not ever have been a better season than that one.
You made me go down a rabbit hole and go watch those highlights again.
You may have to. I'll also say, too, on the running back deal with Jamal Charles and Priest Holmes, Jamal, I think at one point he had the NFL career record.
He still has it.
Yeah, yards per carry.
Yeah.
He's
5.6 or something silly.
You break a record that Jim Brown had, like you've had a pretty good career. And but I think the fact that the Chiefs didn't win a Super Bowl with either of those guys as part of the franchise, it's going to hurt the Hall of Fame candidacy for both. And, I love Terrell Davis. Like, I have a soft spot for running backs. I don't know why. Like, I love Terrell Davis. And you got to look at Terrell Davis's career and be like, okay, yeah, just look at – or Gale Sayers too. Like, just look at those 3 or 4 years. If you look at – and there it is. Jamal Charles, 5.4 yards per carry ahead of Jim Brown. If you look at Priest Holmes for a 3-year period, I think it's 01 to 03. I don't know that any running back in the history of football had a better 3-year run than that 3-year run Priest Holmes had.
Okay. Matthew, we're going to need to see these numbers real quick.
I'm telling you, you look at Priest Holmes, 01 to 03.
01 to 03.
When Priest was like the first fantasy football superstar. It's arguably the best 3-year run any running back has had in the history of pro football.
Yeah, because I'll bring up Scott's. I mean, this is what got me loving football was the Powder Blues,
and
LT 0406. I
love LT, but you look at Priest, look 01 to 03 right there. Yeah, first team for 3 times first team All Pro, like 2,000 yards from scrimmage seasons. Yeah, that should at least get Priest to like the semifinals or the final. I would at least
the Hall of Very Good first ballot.
Yeah, and like Jamal should be in there also. I want Jamal to get to that, but I really want Priest to just get him to the finalist table and let whoever's going to represent the Kansas City media market that's going to stump for Priest, just let them put those 3 years up on a whiteboard or whatever they got in the Hall of Fame and just say, look at this 3-year run, and you've put running backs in a Hall of Fame that have achieved less.
Look, I didn't realize until recently how important it was for NFL socials, NFL PR departments to push for their guys to get into the Hall of Fame. I saw it firsthand this past year with kind of the failure of the Eagles when it came to getting Eric Allen in the Hall of Fame, which should have happened about 10 years ago.
Great corner.
Absolutely. And
I'm saying that as a Cowboys fan. I hate the Eagles, but yeah, Eric Allen was really good.
But I understand now. So hopefully for the Chiefs, it's one of those things where you see, I don't want to say a joint campaign, Jeff, because I think both guys rightfully deserve their own time in the spotlight, but that they push while they can atop of the NFL right now for Jamal Charles and Priest Holmes.
No doubt. And by the way, that means somebody in Pittsburgh needs to get, to quote the great Vance Bedford, get off their duff and let's start putting together the Hall of Fame candidacy for Casey Hampton. Get Casey to the table. Just let him get to the table. That's all I'm asking. All right. One last sponsor we got to thank and show appreciation to with the help of a couple of lifetime Longhorns. Here's a message from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, let's get to a couple more questions in the chat. Jesse Germany, thank you for the question. CJ, I know you answered this on X about Oklahoma State, but is there any player on Arkansas, predicted next coaching fire, that you would take on the Texas roster?
That's a really good question. Look, there's a few that I would at least take a very close look at. The first one, Omega Blake, wide receiver. I don't have his numbers out in front of me right now, but that's a big time play guy. He's, I believe, Arkansas's number one wide receiver at the moment. Big time play waiting to happen. I also really like what they've done with their running backs, Jeff. They go for big burly guys that like to, bump off of, weak tackles. Braylon Russell's a guy who I think is about 6 foot, 240 pounds. Texas obviously got a glimpse of what he could do a year ago in Fayetteville. And I think it's Mike Washington Jr. this year, who was at one point averaging close to 8 yards per carry, at least halfway through the middle of that Memphis game. I'm not sure if he's still there statistically, but their running backs really get things going. I know Texas has a lot of talent in its running back room right now, but those two guys provide, I think, something a little unique when it comes to running style, stature, frame, etc.
Yeah, look, Arkansas's got some talent on that roster. And on offense, they need all the talent they can get because their defense has been garbage and they got to score in the 30s to have a chance. But, man, CJ, I actually watched Oklahoma State Tulsa game, and I was gobsmacked at the dip in the talent level.
Terrible.
In Stillwater. Like, it's unrecognizable from where it was a couple of years ago.
Oh, it's atrocious. And I didn't want to believe going into that game that that's where Oklahoma State was. I came into that game with a betting mindset, because what was it on a Friday night?
Friday, yeah.
Friday night, only thing on, got to gamble on, right? So I did. And at some point, I saw that Tulsa was plus 13. I saw that Tulsa dropped to plus 12. They dropped down to plus 11. Folks are buying into Tulsa. I'm sitting there saying, I can't be on the wrong side here, right? I got to take Tulsa. That's probably not the greatest betting logic there, Jeff, but evidently it was very quickly found out that Tulsa had a better game plan. They were more physical up front, and they had guys that could create after the catcher with the ball in their hands. And that's crazy to say that Tulsa, who recruits right in the backyard of Oklahoma State, is checking the boxes of every single, subjective category that you could sit there and compare the two teams with. It wasn't even close. The quarterbacks, you had a gamer on one side and you had another guy who looked like it was his first time playing. And for whatever reason, it only happens in Stillwater, Jeff. You get a quarterback with the shaky hands.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the case.
No, man. It's sad how far it fell off. And look, I saw it firsthand at Texas with Mac Brown. When you've got a coach that's done so much for the program and you start to feel like you need a change, there's no easy, quote unquote, easy way for that divorce to happen. I mean, producer Matthew probably tell us about Florida State, as I saw the same thing with Bobby Bowden. Like, dude, you're really gonna fire Bobby Bowden? Like, yeah, they're really gonna force Bobby Bowden out.
Yeah.
Saw it with Gary Patterson at TCU, where really, but after watching Mac up close, the next time it happened was with Bill Snyder at K-State, and you could tell like that last year things were starting to unravel, and they're like, how can you do this nicely? I'm like, you can't do it nicely or peacefully or amicably. Like, somebody's gonna get their feelings hurt, and it's tough, and that's what happened at Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy. So it's kind of sad that it got to where it got, but I don't even know what to make of that job that's open right now. Yeah, it's just they're in a weird space.
Yeah, I don't know. And I know it's only week 4. We're going into week 5. There are some jobs open right now. UCLA is probably at the very bottom of intriguing P4 jobs for me.
Yeah,
but I don't think Oklahoma State's all that more intriguing than Virginia Tech, who's been absolutely terrible for 10 years. Yeah,
they've been pretty irrelevant. It's funny, UCLA is one of those programs, like UCLA and Arkansas are the two programs in my mind. I have an overinflated sense of where they are in the college football hierarchy, like in terms of tradition. I'm like, oh man, yeah. There was a time, CJ, not too long ago, when you'd ask me, Brandon was like, yeah, Arkansas and UCLA, those are top 20 programs. And then you start looking at them like, dude, they might not even be like top 40.
Yeah, must have been a long time ago.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you see Route 66, and again, growing up when Arkansas was good, like hearing all the stories about the Southwest Conference, like I just those two programs, I'm like, oh yeah, they're good. Like, no, actually, if you look at their history, it's not all that great. And Virginia Tech, one of the advantages that Frank Beamer had is it's a lighter version to an extent of Miami, because Frank Beamer went and recruited kind of some rougher parts of Virginia that other schools didn't want to go into or didn't know about. And that's where you could get, when he really started building up. Now everybody recruits the DMV. Like there are no secrets in that part.
They're studs up there. They should be able to find guys each year to put. And for a while, I think Virginia Tech, the only redeeming quality about their program is that they would put some really talented defensive backs into the NFL, right? I forget whatever the name of the brothers were, but they had two back in the day. They had Cam Chancellor too. They had guys that would just knock your block off coming over the middle.
Brothers, yeah.
Yep. They had some dudes, and it makes sense. It's like that's a talent-rich area if you're not just a complete joke of a program, and that's what they've turned into. That's what Virginia's turned into. It's been a shame, because I think when you have something as cool as Enter Sandman, you need a program that at least gives it a little bit of a glimpse to come out and have some fun. And right now, there's just nothing in that sense that allows that fun tradition to be shown.
Between Maryland, Virginia, and Virginia Tech, and I know it's a little different for Maryland now that they're in the Big Ten. One of those programs should every year be around a 8 or 9 win team, guaranteed.
I think Maryland's got that. They might be a 10-win team this year. Can I put that on my hot take board, Matthew? Maryland, 10 wins this year.
I was drinking the Vanderbilt Kool-Aid, something fierce last night, so I've already got my hot take in probably for the year on giving my love for Clark Lee and Diego Pavia last night. I think that's about where we're going to wrap it up. CJ, thanks for the knowledge and expertise as always. If you guys have any questions, direct them to the guys at Coffee and Football in the morning. We've also got a live episode of The Winning Drive tomorrow night with Rod Babers, Coach Bob Shipley, and Marcus Myers coming up. That's our Thursday night live stream. Amanda will be back next Tuesday for our Tuesday and Wednesday live streams. That's the plan. So she will be back. So hopefully CJ and I entertained you folks for these last 2 nights. Hey, want to remind everybody, get over to ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member over there, as much stuff as we talk about on the channel, still got plenty more over on the site. If you're not a member, sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Again, that way, whether it's here on the channel or over on the site, you're not missing any of the information that we're dropping to Longhorn fans that's coming from the On Texas Football staff. And again, thanks to our sponsors tonight, South Point Dodge, Advanced Pain Care, Vonlane, and Hayes City Store. Thank you for the sponsorship. Everybody, have a great rest of your night. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Until next time, hook 'em.